Welcome everybody here today, and thank you for the witnesses and for those who have come to hear the hearing. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Glusenkamp Perez for the opening prayer and to lead us in the pledge. Please.
Heavenly
Call the Committee on Small Business to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare the recess of the committee at any time. I now recognize myself for my opening statement. Today's hearing will focus on examining the public and private resources available to our nation's entrepreneurs. And anyone in our country can become an entrepreneur if they're willing to put in hard work to bring an idea to life. That is the beauty of our great country. For many people, they do not know where to even start as they try to accomplish this great objective. They can talk to their network of friends and family, can talk to local chambers of commerce, or research what resources are available in their community, whether that be from the private sector or the federal government. As we've conducted hearings this year, we have too often heard that navigating the federal bureaucracy and figuring out what resources are available can be too challenging for many small business owners. The data backs up this line. As we have repeatedly heard, 70% of business owners give the government a grade of C or below when asked about the effectiveness of their programs. While some federal programs can be beneficial to small businesses, we must ensure that they are being utilized to create successful businesses. These are ultimately taxpayer-funded programs, and it is our duty in Congress to ensure that these dollars are being used as effectively as possible. The government does not need to create a new government program and expand government services whenever a new problem arises. Unfortunately, the SBA has done this far too many times and too often, and while there are programs that have a proven track record of success, such as SBDCs, which leverage federal dollars to state and local partners, but there are others that are not as effective. For example, the Community Navigators Program received nearly $200 million over the last few years to do substantially similar work as other counseling services at the SBA, and their performance metrics are abysmal. As we continually look to make SBA more effective and efficient, we must look to end this type of duplication that is wasting taxpayers' dollars. Additionally, we have our need to be evaluating if a program is beneficial and deserves funding. It is important for us to know that if the private sector is already stepping up to fill a specific need, in many cases the private sector is able to adapt more quickly to the changing needs of small business. If we want to help small business in Congress, the best thing we can do is enacting pro-growth policies that make it easier for them to keep their doors open. Let's not burden them with excessive regulations. Let's lower their tax rates so they can keep more of their hard-earned money. And let's stop the reckless government spending that has caused high inflation and high interest rates. This type of waste across the SBA and other federal agencies leads to inefficiencies, the misuse of taxpayer dollars, and a bloated federal government. Simply put, our goal here today is to examine the landscape of the resources that are available to help small businesses. Once we have an idea, it will make it easier for Congress to utilize what programs are effective and which ones are duplicative of other resources available to our nation's job creators. Small business owners dedicate their lives and finances to the production of services they bring to the marketplace. We salute the small business who continue to fight and give selflessly back to their communities, and we are eager to enact policy solutions that will help pave a path towards success for both now and success in the future. I want to thank you all again for being here today, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation. So with that, I will yield our distinguished ranking member from New York, Ms. Velasquez, who just got here.
Yes.
All right.
Financial services.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. America's 33 million small businesses are the cornerstones of our local economies. When a Main Street business succeeds, we see hard-earned dollars get reinvested back in our communities, along with robust job creation and local economic growth. Launching a small business is not for the faint of heart. When it comes to turning a great idea into a thriving business, entrepreneurs can face a number of challenges. But that is where the SBA comes in. The SBA fosters a robust entrepreneurial ecosystem, one that offers free or low-cost counseling and training to small business owners throughout the country. Whether it is helping to create a business plan, access capital, or navigate the procurement process, the SBA offers a wide range of resources to help small businesses succeed. These programs have a high return on investment. Studies have shown that entrepreneurs who receive counseling and training are able to increase sales and create more jobs. Every year, SBA resource partners assist more than 1 million small business owners. Just imagine how powerful our economy and workforce will be with additional resources for SBA's programs. We could unleash the power of entrepreneurship and innovation in communities all across the United States. Of particular concern to me are the barriers that women, minority, and rural entrepreneurs face each and every day. Lack of access to capital, mentorship, and vital networks are well-known challenges for underserved entrepreneurs. A recent report by the Office of Advocacy confirms that large and persistent racial disparities in business ownership and outcomes have existed for some time in the United States. Only 5% of Blacks and 8% of Latinos own small businesses compared to more than 10% of non-Latinos whites. Moreover, Black and Latino-owned businesses have lower average sales and fewer employees. Equally troubling is the fact that roughly 90% of America's 12 million women entrepreneurs are sole proprietors and stay small. Despite representing more than 50% of the population, women garnered roughly 2% of venture-backed capital in 2022. And while rural communities have a higher rate of self-employment, they rely more on personal savings to launch a business and face acute workforce challenges. We have to break down the barriers that keep women, minority, and rural entrepreneurs from reaching their full potential. That means providing small businesses that are often overlooked with access to capital and arming them with the resources and technical assistance needed to grow and prosper. It also means filling the gaps that are not being met by the private sector and state and local economic development agencies. I'm looking forward to today's hearing and I hope to learn more about public-private efforts that are underway to help small businesses thrive. Thanks to all the witnesses for participating, and I hope we have a productive discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, and I will now introduce our witnesses, but let me tell you, it's pretty simple. You've got some lights in front of you, and you're going to have 5 minutes, and the lights will turn yellow, they'll turn red or whatever, and if you hear this, you need to cut it off, okay? All right? So we appreciate you all being here. So our first witness today is Chris Pilkerton. Mr. Pilkerton is the Chief Legal Officer of the Axion Opportunity Fund located in San Jose, California. Axion Opportunity Fund is the nation's largest nonprofit community development financial institution concentrating on small business support for underserved communities. Prior to this time at the Axion Opportunity Fund, Mr. Pilkerton served as acting administrator of the Small Business Administration during the Trump administration. During his time at the SBA, he helped coordinate federal, state, and local economic development efforts to help our nation's job creators. Mr. Pilkerton earned his J.D. from Catholic University of America, a bachelor's degree from Fairfield University, and a certificate in data and analytics from Cornell University's College of Business. Mr. Pilkerton, thank you for being here today, and we look forward to the conversation ahead. Our next witness today is Mr. Reginald Hodges. I've had the pleasure of meeting Mr. Hodges several times over in the last few years through all the work he does in the great state of Texas. He is an owner and president of the Training Center of Central Texas College located in Harker Heights, Texas. A former Navy Civil Engineer Corps officer, Mr. Hodges has over 11 years of military service and over 16 years of construction management experience. Mr. Hodges started the Training Center of Central Texas with a vision of training men and women to enter the solar technology field. Since opening, the school has expanded their curriculum to include a variety of programs ranging from dental assistant to substation technician. Mr. Hodges earned his Bachelor's of Applied Science from the University of North Florida and his master's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from California Polytechnic State University in San Luis Obispo. So, Mr. Hodges, it's good to see you, and thank you foremost for your service of being here today, and we look forward to our conversation ahead. Our next witness is Mr. Rich Palmer. Mr. Palmer is the Managing Director of Launchpad Venture Group located in Boston, Massachusetts. Launchpad Venture Group is an angel investment group that provides funding and counseling services to early-stage startup companies. Mr. Palmer is also on the Public Policy Committee of the Angel Capital Association, and prior to his time at Launchpad Venture Group, he co-founded Gravity, lead product development at Relationship Science, and was ahead of the portfolio analytics for S&P Capital IQ's quantitative intelligence team. Mr. Palmer earned his Bachelor's of Science from, Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. What do you all do? What's your mascot? I got you, didn't I? Okay. All right. Polytechnic Institute, and received his Master of Business Administration from Babson College. Mr. Palmer, thank you for being here today, and we look forward to the conversation ahead. And I now recognize the ranking member from New York, Ms. Velasquez, to briefly introduce our last witness appearing before us today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Sonia Smith from my hometown state of New York. Ms. Smith is the State Director of the New York Small Business Development Center and has a deep knowledge of the challenges our small businesses are facing today. She has an MBA from Albright College and has risen through the ranks of the SBDC network. She is the first woman and first African American to lead the New York State SBDC, and I'm proud that she is testifying before our committee today. Welcome, Ms. Smith. Thank you for being here. I look forward to your testimony. Are you back?
Thank you. Now, and again, we all appreciate all of you being here today. And I now recognize Mr. Chris Pilkerton for his 5-minute opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Velasquez, and to all the committee members. Over the last several years, I've spent my career focusing on issues related to the small business community, with particular attention to underserved populations. I served as the General Counsel of the U.S. Small Business Administration under Administrator Linda McMahon, as well as the Acting Administrator of the agency from April 2019 into early 2020, when I joined the White House to advance the issues that included access to capital and workforce development. The lessons of those efforts and an associated bipartisan plan going forward have been documented more specifically in a book that I've recently co-authored entitled Underserved. Since leaving government, I've continued this work in various capacities. I serve as the Chief Legal Officer for Axion Opportunity Fund, the leading nonprofit community development financial institution focused on small business lending and technical assistance to underserved borrowers all across the country. I've also co-founded and developed an initiative called the Small Business Corps at Georgetown University Business School, a private sector-led program to offer underserved small businesses with specific goal-focused technical support provided by fellows who are recent college and business school graduates. I've also worked closely with people like the performing artist Ice Cube to identify opportunities for underserved small businesses to scale and participate in the Fortune 500 corporate supply chain. While access to capital for small businesses is critical, academic analysis have shown that technical assistance and counseling can be amongst the most meaningful components of the business's ability to perform, develop, scale, and hire. There are technical assistance resource partners that have traditionally been an important part of the small business ecosystem, organizations such as SBDCs, SCORES, Women Business Centers, and Veterans Business Centers. As this committee is aware, certain funds to support these organizations are appropriated and then distributed via SBA. I've worked with all these organizations and have seen their impact on the growth of individual small businesses. Given my experience in this arena, I'd recommend this committee consider the following methods to advance small business technical assistance in the United States. First, for any entity that receives technical assistance dollars from a government grant or designated appropriation, there must be a common menu of meaningful performance metrics, both before and after distribution of the funds. These metrics must be reasonable and realistic, but also be significant enough to hold grantees accountable to the provision of quality services. Second, technology must be central to this process from start to finish. Not only should technology be utilized to streamline the application process, but the actual technical assistance provided must have a substantive online learning component, as is seen in the SBA's Ascent platform, which was championed by Administrator McMahon and continues to be highlighted by the agency. Third, perhaps not dissimilar to the intent of the Community Reinvestment Act, the government must consider ways to engage and incentivize the private sector in this work. At Axion Opportunity Fund, for example, we work with companies like Federal Express and Boston Brewing Company to advance online support and coaching opportunities for entrepreneurs. Programs like these or government-initiated opportunities like the 2019 Pledge to the American Worker can also serve as a model of the convening power of government to engage businesses of all sizes to advance trainings, apprenticeships, and job placement all across the country. Fourth, in connection with the existing resource partners, policymakers must encourage and incorporate new and innovative technical assistance stakeholders into this process. During my time at SBA, for example, we pioneered a pilot program called the Makerspace Hiring, Training, and Collaboration and Hiring Match Initiative to advance the Makerspace incubator system. This pilot immediately impacted many businesses across the country in places like California, Missouri, New Hampshire, New York, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, and Puerto Rico. Fifth, Congress should be a partner to the executive branch as part of the trackable interagency cooperation process. Although meetings like these are usually governed by executive order or memorandum of understanding, on this topic, a congressionally engaged bipartisan working group for key offices such as SBA, MBDA, the Department of Labor's WIOA, and various secondary education offices within the Department of Education could make huge strides on this topic and avoid much of the bureaucratic disruption that can impact any administration. Finally, I'll close by saying that all of this is doable right now. However, these would just be part of an overall strategy that could be developed in accordance with a comprehensive study on these issues. Now, I know that such studies are often frowned upon as kicking the can down the road, but given the massive size of all of these grants and appropriations in their entirety, such a review could set forth a government-wide best practices approach that could maximize measurable small business and workforce outcomes while ensuring the government is a responsible steward of taxpayer dollars. Thank you again to all of you for your work in this area, and I look forward to answering any questions.
Now, I now recognize Mr. Reginald Hodges for 5-minute opening remarks.
Good afternoon, Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Velasquez, and distinguished members of the House Committee on Small Business. Thank you very much for inviting me to tell our story. I'm truly honored to be here today and to share the story of the Training Center of Central Texas. We're both a minority and veteran-owned business since 2017. The Training Center was honored to have Chairman Williams address our summer graduating class of 2021. He was called away to Washington, D.C. for a vote on the infrastructure bill, but he recorded an address to our students, which was a memorable moment for our 49 graduates, mostly military veterans of our electrical, solar, and medical technician training programs. I'm Reginald Hodges, CEO of the President Training Center of Texas. I was approached by the congressional staff to share our story of our growth and our challenges of training our students, not only for careers, but also for starting their own businesses. The Training Center offers cost-effective, career-focused, flexible education and prepares our students for in-demand jobs in the solar, medical, and electrical industries. Having been recognized for 3 years straight as the #1 trade school in our area, we would not be here today without Bayan Canadian, the co-owner, and the first person that every student meets when they walk through that door, and also our esteemed director, Jim Bondi, a retired colonel and one of the most respected men in our Fort Cavazos community. I enlisted in the Navy in 1994 at the Navy Recruit Training Command at Great Lakes. There was a building there, Building 1405, located right there right there in boot camp, and they had a mural of the first African-American naval officers in history, in the Navy's history. They were commissioned there at Great Lakes. These 12 ensigns and 1 warrant officer went on to serve with distinction in World War II. They called themselves the Golden 13. As I looked up to those 13 men on a mural, I knew I wanted to be a naval officer, and I dedicated my life to that goal. The first day I arrived at my duty station in Jacksonville, Florida, I enrolled in classes for my associates and at the local community college where I attended school full-time at night, full-time. After leaving the Navy in 1998, I was accepted to an officer program at the University of North Florida. Upon graduation with my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, I attended Navy OCS. That day, the day I was commissioned in 2001 is still the greatest honor I've ever had, and I proudly served our country for 11 years. I'm a person of integrity and a believer in service in our community and building the next generation of skills. I'm reminded that the students who we serve at the training center, anywhere from 18 to 30 years old, they comprise 20% of the population, yet they make up 100% of our future. We have a strong need to equip our students with the most enduring critical skills in healthcare, construction, in the electrical trade, and solar technicians. These skills, and actually at our school, these skills often get used right while our students are in school. Our students work at nursing homes, assisted living homes, blood drives, and actually do the electrical wiring for Habitat for Humanities all throughout our area. As a career school, I would hope that we can obtain from this hearing additional resources for trade schools to partner with local businesses, school districts, and trade organizations. Because by working together, we can actually help build a stronger workforce and support economic growth in our communities. Additionally, I hope that we can foster more programs that are similar to Boots, that's very successful, Boots to Business program for transitioning veterans, but something for civilians, more specifically high school seniors. As approximately 40% of small business owners do not have a college education, however, nearly all of them have a high school education. I'd say let's get the word out about the great resources that the Small Business Administration has, and because the resources are there, but few are aware. I'd like to thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. Thank you very much, Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Velasquez, and you distinguished the distinguished people here on the House Committee of Small Businesses. It's been an honor. It is an honor, shall I say. Thank you.
I'm sorry. We recognize Mr. Palmer for his 5-minute opening remarks.
Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Velasquez, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. My name is Rich Palmer. I'm the Managing Director of Launchpad Venture Group, and I'm here on behalf of the Angel Capital Association. I'll call it the ACA. I'm happy to be here to discuss how Congress can improve the federal government's engagement with angel investing to better facilitate the flow of capital to small businesses. ACA is a professional society of accredited angel investors who make up the world's most prolific early-stage investment class. ACA represents more than 15,000 accredited angel investors and 250 angel groups, accredited platforms, and family offices, who together deploy more than $950 million in early-stage capital every year, supporting more than 30,000 entrepreneurial companies. I've spent nearly 20 years focused on entrepreneurship. Beginning my career on Wall Street, I eventually co-founded Gravity, the leading company for social good, using AI. I also serve as an entrepreneur in residence at Babson College, have invested in dozens of promising startups, and speak regularly on entrepreneurship. In 2022, I became Managing Director of Launchpad Venture Group, a leading nationally recognized angel network. Launchpad currently has more than 185 active angel investors who provide human and financial capital to help entrepreneurs build successful companies. Each Launchpad member is qualified as an accredited investor under the definition of Rule 501 of the SEC regulations. Each year, Launchpad invests $8 to $10 million both in new and follow-on opportunities. As one of the most active angel networks in the United States, Launchpad exemplifies the power of angel investing as a driver of entrepreneurship. Angel investing supports small businesses in 4 distinct ways. First, angel investors provide crucial funding to startups and early-stage companies that may have difficulty accessing traditional sources of capital. Second, angel investors provide invaluable mentorship and guidance to entrepreneurs, as they often have a wealth of experience in the industry or sector that they invest in. Third, angel investors are willing to take on higher risks compared to traditional investors like banks and financial institutions, and thereby enable early-stage companies to pursue innovative ideas that have the potential for substantial growth and job creation. Lastly, angels lend credibility to a startup. When a reputable angel investor conducts due diligence, sits on a board, and invests in a company, it signals to other investors, customers, and stakeholders that the business has potential and is worth considering. The facts speak for themselves. A Desert Angels study found that every angel investment dollar has a multiplier effect of 21x. For example, the average initial investment from a Launchpad member is $25,000, which creates economic value worth more than $500,000 per investor. The importance of angel investing is further augmented by the reality that existing federal resources oriented towards small businesses, such as the Small Business Agency, SBA, fail to capture the entire innovation ecosystem. The SBA is undoubtedly an important organization. However, the SBA does not focus on the early-stage innovative companies that angel investors concentrate on. Rather, they focus on traditional, established small businesses such as local restaurants, flower shops, and so on. Since the SBA does not capture the entire innovation ecosystem, SBA should begin to leverage local angel groups and our know-how to get more capital to entrepreneurs. Importantly, although more than 16 million Americans qualify as accredited investors, only about 16,000 are active angels. SBA could help narrow that disparity by developing programs that leverage private investment capital in early-stage companies. Such an initiative would especially benefit entrepreneurs of color and women who may not be able to leverage connections or family wealth for their investment. My colleagues and I are ready and willing to serve as a resource of information and feedback as you pursue your legislative solutions to make capital more readily available to our nation's entrepreneurs. Thank you again for this opportunity to share my experience with you. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, and I now recognize Ms. Sonia Smith for her 5-minute opening remarks.
Thank you, Chairman Williams, Ranking Member Velasquez, and to the House Small Business Committee members. Again, I'm Sonia Smith, and thank you for the introduction. I am the State Director for the New York Small Business Development Center, and with my experience of over 15 years of various roles within the SBDC, Small Business Development and Economic Development, from my knowledge gained from the work and experience with the SBDC, I'm understanding and learned of the importance of building an ecosystem to provide solutions to communities, regions, state, and nationwide. As stated, both public and private resources can be valuable as entrepreneurs look to start or grow their business. We must ensure that any taxpayer dollars going towards these efforts are being effectively used in a way that is not duplicative of private sector initiatives. The Small Business Administration offers a variety of services to help educate and counsel small businesses, including small business development centers. With over 1,000 locations nationwide, SBDCs provide valuable resources to small businesses across the country. Through a partnership with SBA, SBDCs are hosted by universities, colleges, state economic development agencies, or private entities, and our goal is to help launch and grow small businesses. And the state of New York is one of the 63 networks represented in the nationwide program, consisting of all the states and U.S. territories. In the state of New York, there are 22 service centers covering all 62 counties. There is no one-size solution or organization for the 33 million small businesses across the country. Each business owner or entrepreneur has their own unique circumstances that may need the support and assistance from several resources. As one of the 4 resource partners of the SBA, SBDCs, SCORE, and Women's Business Centers, and Veteran Business Outreach Centers, SBDCs are a nationally accredited program that provide one-on-one, no-cost confidential advising to small business owners and entrepreneurs, educational training, and research and business resources. The SBDC program offers a broad reach, resources, and opportunities to create an impact on businesses at every stage of their business lifecycle. The SBDCs across the country deliver high-quality services and programming by experienced experts at each center. By leveraging the private-public resources and partnerships, our program serves over 1 million small businesses nationwide and has the opportunity to continue to serve more with a multiplier effect. With each SBA core dollar, federal dollars, the SBDCs match that program with state, local, and host institution funds. It is the SBA's largest matching grant-funded program. This shows not only the financial support from the state and local and host institutions, but also the value added the SBDCs provide to stakeholders in their communities. One of the key functions of the SBDC is to be a trusted collaborator and connector. The SBDCs tie all these parts together in terms of small business assistance across the country, and you will see how we partner with entities at the state level, as well as the local and city and county development groups to provide a consistent support statewide. The SBA congressional budget that states that the Office of Entrepreneurial Development has made noteworthy progress. The SBDCs have provided a large share of these achievements. 88% of capital infusion, 74% of new business starts, serving over 1 million clients, as well as supporting over 5 million jobs. The success of the program is evident, and the data shows that the results increased during the pandemic, and the demand has stayed up as well as the results. When small business owners and entrepreneurs need support, they do not know, one, they do not know where to go or where to start. Two, there are so many resources available that they are not sure which one would be beneficial, too much information at once. And the SBDCs have been known as the best kept secret, which is not a compliment of the program with the inception year of 1979. During the pandemic, with the support of CARES Act funds, the SBDCs were able to, for the first time, use SBA grant funds to develop a pay for marketing and informational materials to expand research or to expand reach to communities. The reauthorization of the program would help modernize the administrative concerns and streamline processes and provide allocation for marketing purposes. SBDCs collaborate with resource partners and private organizations, chambers of commerce, trade and industry groups, and associations by providing technical assistance due to staffing capacity, training, and educational programs. We are also co-located in these locations for accessibility. Thank you again for your time and your work with small businesses and taxpayers across the country, and I look forward to your questions.
Great. We will now move to the member questions under the 5-minute rule, which we talked about. So I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Mr. Hodges, we said earlier, met several times previously, and before I get started, I want to thank you again for your service to our country and the outreach you do to the veterans around newly named Fort Cavazos. You know it's better than most, but our servicemen and women are such great leaders and can do amazing things in the private sector when they are given the right training and the right opportunities. So one of the most pressing things we keep hearing when we speak with small business is the ability to find qualified workers. Mr. Hodges, my question, can you describe how the Training Center of Central Texas is able to adapt to the needs of the small business community, and how do you ensure that you're able to continue providing value for your customers?
Mr. Chairman, well, first of all, there's a shortage of electricians right now. Whether you have the infrastructure bill, you have the renewable energy that's going on across the country. Well, 70% of renewable energy jobs are actually going to be performed by electricians. And right now, we have a shortage of 60,000 electricians in the United States. As a matter of fact, the average age of an electrician, licensed electrician, is 57 years old. So what our school decided to do was create a program that was a short 6-month program that actually would address this need. We've partnered with local contractors in the area where right now, I'm trying to get numbers here, approximately 20 of our students have actually went on to work at this local contractor. And also we've been partnering with KISD in our area also to bring in newly graduated students to actually come over to the training center. And the way this is actually working is just yesterday, I'm going to give you a brief example here. Just yesterday, we had two students for the recent high school graduates come into the training center. They signed up for our program, for our electrician program, and they didn't want to go to. They said they didn't want to go to college. Okay, they wanted a job within the next 6 months. And when they graduate, they're actually going to go and work for the local contractor there in our area. And it's really a very, very beautiful thing that we're doing there.
Mr. Pilkerton, you have a unique perspective on the topics we're discussing today since you've served as the acting administrator of the SBA and now are focusing on how the private sector can get better engaged to help small business. So can you describe some of the work you did during the time as acting administrator to coordinate public and private partnerships without needing to spend additional federal funds?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. So I think what I would say from my time at SBA is really the big sort of takeaway from this is meeting businesses where they are and including the components of innovation. And let me give you an example. So all of the resource partners that we've talked about here today provide an incredibly valuable service to the SBA. But I do think the SBA, in order to innovate and modernize, needs to think about how those resource partners and perhaps other resource partners could engage as part of this sort of small business ecosystem. So one of the examples that we used was the Ascent platform that I mentioned before, and that was championed by Administrator McMahon. And that was focused on women businesses. And it was called Ascent because it was essentially a mountain process where you would scale your business, and the technology that supported it was created by SBA and labor, but it allowed these small businesses to scale to sort of where they were. So it's not just starting your business, but being able to get into that corporate supply chain, which is innovation. The second thing I would say is we did a makerspace program, which I referenced in my testimony, and that's really sort of the future of local incubators. So when you talk about trying to meet businesses where they are, makerspaces are very critical because they can provide not only resources, but the kind of SBA information to those businesses in a local fashion.
Also, Ms. Pilkerton, you mentioned your testimony the need to have consistent performance metrics between SBA programs. Can you give us quickly some examples of programs at the agency that have unproven track records of success but continue to receive taxpayer dollars?
So as I mentioned in my testimony, I think that this is a huge opportunity for both the agency and this committee to work together to perform a study of these programs. Because quite honestly, there are programs that are incredibly impactful, and there are components of those programs that are perhaps antiquated and not meeting where the actual business owners are. So as I mentioned in my testimony, I know we're sort of towards the end, I would really encourage a study to be supported by this committee.
Thank you very much. I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Smith, as you mentioned, and I mentioned in my opening statement, there are 33 million small businesses nationwide, and SBA resource partners provide important counseling and training to more than 1 million entrepreneurs each year. What can this committee do to help the SBDCs and the other resource partners reach more small businesses?
Thank you, Ranking Member, for the question. And so what is the main focus, I think, is the reauthorization of the program to be able to assist there with not only the administrative side and the processes and streamlining, but also the ability to have an allocation towards marketing and outreach. For the first time, CARES Act funds were the only allowable grant funds that were utilized for marketing and outreach.
Yes, thank you. I understand that you formed, Ms. Smith, a partnership with host universities in New York to address some of the pressing workforce challenges facing small businesses in the state. How have this effort benefited both workers and small businesses?
Thank you. The apprenticeship program is a partnership with SUNY CUNY, so the State University of New York, the City Universities of New York, and Department of Labor. The main focus is the SBDC's being a main partner with the community colleges to provide a apprenticeship program. This is also to develop client-facing, so webinars as well as webinars for our advisors on workforce development. This is to focus on how a business will register as a site for apprenticeship, for on-the-job training. This will assist with the earn as you learn. And on the other side of it is looking at the availability of training at the community colleges and the colleges in the area. So if a business has some upskill training that they would like to do, is participating in that and getting funds that will help utilize and push forward the upward mobility of their workforce.
Thank you. Mr. Pilkerton, increasing access to capital for the underserved has been a top priority of mine. Given the breadth of your experience with the underserved, can you share with this committee what more can be done to penetrate these hard-to-reach communities, and also how important is counseling and technical assistance for these entrepreneurs?
So thank you for the question. I'll take the last part first. So at Axion Opportunity Fund, we have received feedback that 90% of our clients who utilize the technical assistance would encourage others to do so. So it's clearly a huge impact. But to your point, as far as getting access to capital into underserved communities, one of the reasons when I left the SBA that I came to a CDFI was to ensure that CDFIs and MDIs have that seat at the table with other financial institutions, because the services that they provide are critical, and the outreach that they have to these communities of color, women, rural areas, and other groups are really kind of that piece that's missing from the financial services system. So the more support that they get from the private sector, because they're very engaged, really enhances that opportunity.
Thank you. Mr. Palmer, despite representing over 50% of the population, female founders garner only 2.1% of venture-backed capital in 2022. And the numbers are not better for minority-led companies. In your experience, what is being done to increase diversity on both the investor and investment sides?
Thank you for that question. On the Launchpad Venture Group, which is the group I represent, I have specific statistics. I'll read them out because they're a lot better than that 2% number, which is, it's unfortunate, right? So about 13% of our founders are minority by their own definition of that. 26% have an immigrant on the founding team, 30% have at least one woman on the founding team, and about 53% of the companies that we fund, have a combination of those three, right? One of the things that we're seeing in the industry is on the investor side, people, I said 16 million people could be angel investors, but only 16,000 are. A lot of that feels like awareness of this opportunity. I talk about what I do on a daily basis, and they say, you can do that? I can help entrepreneurs. I can make a little money. I could do these kinds of things, right? And I think a lot of times those opportunities were done on the golf course or behind the scenes or any of that kind of stuff. And so now, because of that awareness, especially at Launchpad, we are actively looking to balance and get folks in that are female, that are minority.
Your time is up.
Oh, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
My time is up.
Oh. We're
I
working.
yield back.
All right, thank you. Okay, I now recognize Mr. Lukemeyer from the great state of Missouri for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The federal government is notorious for wasting taxpayer dollars with duplicative programs and unnecessary red tape. One of the most concerning examples of this is within the SBA is the Community Navigator Pilot Program. Although the SBA already had a high-performing program to help small businesses with training and development, SCORE, the Democrat-led American Rescue Plan established a Community Navigator program which duplicates much of what the SCORE program provides. Worse, in 2022, it was reported that Community Navigators received $120 million in funding and only helped 422 small businesses, while SCORE successfully helped 4,000 small businesses with $20 million. That's 10 times the money, 1/6 of the businesses. According to SBA's FY24 budget request, they want to decrease the SCORE program funding and increase the budget for the Community Navigator program. Mr. Pilkerton, from your experience, you think that's a good deal?
Well, thank you for the question. With respect to the Community Navigator program, my organization did not apply or participate, so I cannot speak to the metrics that you reference. But I can tell you this, the SCORE program is excellent. When I was SBA administrator, I traveled the country, and I will tell you that I went to individual businesses where the SCORE mentors knew as much about the business as the business owners, and they were just as excited about the successes of that business. And every small business that I went to was benefited tremendously by the knowledge, the wisdom, and real experience that these folks had had during their very successful careers.
I come from the Lake of the Ozarks area there in Missouri, which is a retirement area, and we have lots of retired executives there. And so that area has a SCORE chapter. It is, at one time, it was the top SCORE chapter in the whole United States because of so many executives retiring and willing to share their expertise and knowledge. So it's a really, really good program, and I really want to highlight that. Mr. Palmer, you were talking about a development program for angel investors to help leverage with the leverage money with the SBA a minute ago. Can you expand that just a little bit?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So for angels, a lot of times what we're looking to do is trying to figure out what kind of risk we are underwriting, right? The goal is to sort of help these companies grow, reach critical mass, but also, see what their natural exit is. And that typically happens between, let's say, $50 and a $200 million exit. We're not talking about the unicorns, if you know that word. They're unicorns, they're rare for a reason. We're trying to get involved, help these companies win, right? Which means we need to start from, if that's the end point, we need to make sure that we're not overly sort of taking our after-tax dollars and putting them into companies and sort of rooting the economics for us and for the founders. So what we kind of see is for more capital-intensive but very worthwhile businesses, let's say robotics, let's say AI, let's say chips, where an angel doesn't have the pocket to do it or we don't have the time to hold on to, that kind of stuff, working with the SBA specifically through like SBIR grants so that the entrepreneur can hold on to more of their company through the non-dilutive funding, and then we take over at the commercialization stage.
Quick question for you with regards to, the title of the hearing is with regards to inflation problems here with the small businesses. Have you seen inflation affect the number of businesses interested in having angel financing or increased it?
That's a good question. We see.
I only ask good questions.
No, it's a great question.
That's why I'm on this committee. We ask good questions.
Thank you.
We ask them of people that got good answers, though, too.
We see about 1,500 to 2,000 companies a year that come through our doors, and some are ready for angel investments, some are not. A lot are looking for it. I think what people are recognizing now is that it's a harder funding landscape, and some of the, I'll use the word shenanigans, less defined, of sort of the front headlines of VC and FTX and Theranos are kind of making this a harder place for these small companies to navigate. I don't see inflation affecting the companies that come to us. What might affect it is our angels' ability to actually deploy capital, especially if about 10% of their, we say about 10% of your net worth should go into this asset class, maybe no more because of the risk. So if something else goes down, you're overly allocated in this asset class, and it could affect your deployment, but not the company side.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, thank you so much. I don't have time to ask a question, but I just want to thank you for being here today, for what you do for a lot of individuals to get them into the workplace. Today's world, technicians are going to be very, very important, and you're helping them get in that position and fill a very important need. Thank you so much. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you, and I now recognize Mr. Landsman from the great state of Ohio for 5 minutes. No questions? Let's go. There you go. All right, we recognize Mr. McGarvey from great state of Kentucky for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Thank everyone so much for being here today. We really appreciate being in front of the committee. This is a committee that does work together to try and help small businesses succeed in all of our communities. We know what an important force and part of the backbone of our communities that small businesses are. So we want to talk about how we can continue to support the next generation of those small businesses. Small Business Development Centers, or the SBDCs, offer counseling and training to all sorts of small businesses by developing informational tools that will provide for foundational guidance to startups and existing businesses alike. So, Ms. Smith, one of the things you mentioned is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this, or there's no, there's 33 million small businesses across the country. We can't just have one approach for all of them. But can you touch on how the SBDCs work to meet entrepreneurs where they are and how this program provides assistance to small business owners of all backgrounds.
Yes, thank you for the question. We focus on meeting people where they are, entrepreneurs and small business owners, with our outreach within the community. Of course, during the pandemic, that was a different deployment method, but we do work with a lot of chambers of commerce, nonprofit organizations, as well as our host institutions of higher education. The more we look at our stakeholders and our partners in our communities is, as I mentioned, a connector and a collaborator. So we meet our community members where they are, and that's also the diversity of our clients. The ranking member spoke about the diversity of women and minorities, of not understanding the resources or not getting the same in sales and access to capital. So that can be, we call it, in some of the centers, beat on the street. So walking down to the community and the neighborhoods in downtown, visiting the clients that we already served, but also checking into clients to talk about our SBDC services. And as I mentioned, nonprofit organizations, but also churches, areas where you may not think about small businesses, but there are entrepreneurs and small businesses to reach.
Thank you. And we want these programs to be successful.
Yes.
We can be critical of the administration when it's time. We want to, also offer praise when it's due, but we want these programs to work. We want these programs to work for our small businesses. So we're encouraging entrepreneurs and small businesses to grow. And I did notice that the administration added a new metric that measures client satisfaction with the small business development centers, and the score was 93% favorable, which, when that information comes back to us, is certainly an accomplishment. So with that score that we've gotten back, how do these SBDCs and the other resource partners set themselves apart from programs offered at the state and local level in the private sector?
Thank you. We are an accredited program of economic development and small business development. So what that means is a peer-to-peer method of continuous improvement and the excellence in service. And so that model is modeled after the Baldrige standard. And so that is helpful for looking at our networks and the consistency, but also reinventing our programs. So that is the way we look at the excellence. Customer service and our client needs are the most important. So how we collaborate together, co-counsel, co-advise, but look at best practices across the nation. So that's a big thing for us, I think, as state directors, but all partners, is meeting the client where, as you mentioned in the first question, meeting them where they are, but also what success means for that client.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Because, like I said, we want these programs to work. We also want more small businesses. We want people to have access to small business and to entrepreneurship, particularly traditionally disadvantaged groups. And so appreciate the work there. Mr. Hodges, just before my time expires, I want to ask you a question, because I loved your statement that students who are between the ages of 18 to 30 comprise 20% of our population, but 100% of our future. I couldn't agree more with that statement. And this committee has discussed extensively the opportunities for students to build careers outside of the traditional four-year college route. And I think it's important that we create pathways to employment and business ownership for every kind of student. So what are some ways that we can help more small business partner with career and technical education programs capable of building their skilled workforce, something I hear the small businesses in my district, clamor for on a daily basis?
Well, actually, I have to say awareness. When I look at the Small Business Administration and everything that they're doing, there's a lot of, you can go to the website, from the very beginning of your business all the way to closing it out. All the information is there, but the problem is no one is getting to that information. And just I know I'm running out of time here, but just say for instance, right after the pandemic, we were getting a lot of emails and marketing materials and stuff about the disaster relief fund. It was so helpful for our school, and it really was, and we took advantage of it. If that same amount of effort was given, I'm not saying that it's not here, but if that same amount of effort was given about the Small Business Administration and all the things that we can do here,
Your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
It
I yield
really
back,
would-
Mr.
It really
Chairman.
would do a lot. Thank you.
Next, we recognize Mr. Musser from the great state of Pennsylvania for 5 minutes.
I appreciate that, Chairman. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to our witnesses. So, got a number of questions. First off, I'd like to ask Mr. Pilkerton, yourself, and Ms. Smith, just related to cybersecurity resources and access to information. That seems to be an ongoing theme here that we gotta talk about. But do you feel that small business owners have the sufficient awareness of what to do should they come under some sort of cyber attack, Mr. Pilkerton?
Thank you for the question. So there's information on the SBA website about how you can protect your business against cyber, but to the point that was just made, that information's on the website. It goes back to the idea of not only do you need a process, a program, a risk protocol, but how do you communicate that to the small business? So you have to do it in an innovative way that's actually meeting the small business where they are. So to answer your question, I couldn't give you a percentage of small businesses that are aware of the cyber threat, but I think it's incumbent upon the federal government and state governments and local economic development groups to enhance that and provide that information in an efficient way.
Okay. Ms. Smith, does the SBDC offer such information and connections?
Yes, talking about the public and private partnership, that is one we already have one established and then developing a new one when it comes to micro enterprises. So right now, small to medium-sized businesses, we give them an intuitive platform with partnership with an entity called Posture. These are on this platform is training on best practices and gaining access to vital resources to help protect their data, devices, and security and stability for their operations. On the other side, for micro enterprises, is really focusing not only on cybersecurity, but looking at disaster resiliency and succession planning. So most micro enterprises don't understand cybersecurity or how to protect themselves, so trying to be more proactive than reactive.
Wow, that sounds excellent. So working with local chambers, I've got some excellent chambers throughout my district. In fact, they're outstanding. Do you find the SBA and your organizations work effectively with the chambers? I'll ask you, Mr. Palmer.
I have no experience with that, so sorry, but thank you.
Is that right? Okay, Mr. Pinkerton.
I think they do work effectively, but I think it could be much more effective because the chambers are the ones that actually are working with those private sector companies and have the ability. The U.S. Chamber has a number of programs around this, but I do agree that that could bring a lot more private resources and also great workforce opportunities to what Mr. Hodges was talking about.
County chambers for angel investors as well as for training programs. I mean, talk about know the customer. I mean, they spend a lot of time together. They know them extremely well. Mr. Hodges, do you engage with the chambers?
Yes, sir. We're very engaged with the chambers in our area. And as a matter of fact, we're very community focused as a trade school. And one of the reasons why we became #1 in our area is because every month on our calendars, we always reach out and do something for our community. And through those actions, we actually do a lot of business.
Let me ask you both this. Actually, Mr. Palmer, not you, because you don't really work with the chambers yet. You should change that, though. Ms. Hodges, does the SBA or the local chambers provide you better access to for your business?
Yes, sir. Whenever we need any type of services for our business, one of the first people that we would actually contact is our local chamber, Harker Heights Chamber of Commerce, as a matter of fact. And they've helped us with accounting, finding services for electrical work, and much, much more.
Let me ask all of you this question. So the Navigator program was introduced in I think it was the Inflation Reduction Act, and it cost $130 million, and it served 422 new businesses, or helped start up 122 new businesses, which works out to be about $300,000 per small business startup. Now, they also do servicing on 16,000 others, but even do the math there, that's like $8,000 per outreach. You think there'd be a better way of spending money, particularly since it may be very duplicative to SBDC? Comments?
I mentioned some of the what we do as our data and the the strength of the SBDC program, but community navigators, those relationships were already longstanding before the community navigators pilot. So some of those spokes and hubs we've already worked with.
Thank you. I'm over my time. I appreciate it. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Tanador from the great state of Michigan for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. And I want to thank all of you for being here and for your testimony. I'm an immigrant, and after getting my education, I, had the entrepreneurial bug and wanted to start my own business. And it was a little struggle getting capital, but I was able to secure a 504 from the Small Business Administration that helped me buy my first building for my business, and which made a huge difference. And then, I got another 504 later. So it's hard to access, but if you pursue sometime, good things happen. My concern, I represent Detroit and surrounding areas, Michigan's 13th district. And Mr. Palmer, Ms. Smith, I focus on bringing entrepreneurship. I feel like I achieved my American dream, but a lot of people in my district don't have access to it and have a difficulty having access to the American dream. And part of the reason why I'm not running my businesses and I sold them and decided to enter public services because I wanted to help out others to achieve their American dream. Now I see, Ms. Smith, if you look at the percentage of black-owned businesses, they are substantially lower than our Latino businesses, for example, substantially lower than their white counterparts. We also see a lower revenues for black businesses, black and brown businesses, a lower number of employees. Mr. Palmer, in terms of capital, I see angel investment is much lower in black businesses. Angel follow-on investment is substantially lower in black businesses. And here I am trying to promote entrepreneurship. And I see a lot. I have a woman in my district. She is an amazing baker. She bakes amazing things. She has the technical knowledge. She has a desire to succeed, but does not have the business knowledge. So how does we give people who have the desire, the skills, technical skills? How do we give them the business skills? Mr. Palmer, I believe you went to Babson. Yeah, I was in Babson, took my son there for an interview, and I was so impressed with that college. I was being an entrepreneur, I was excited to see a college that's purely focused on entrepreneurship education. Unfortunately, my son did not take my advice and choose an alternate school, which was a good school too. But so in terms of angel investment, again, what can be done to get angel investment for black and brown communities? Where is the problem? Is it them being educated? Are there any kind of hurdles that we can overcome to rectify that situation? I don't have a lot of time left, but I want to let you and Ms. Smith address some of these concerns if you can.
Thank you. I'll be as quick as I can. So Babson College, #1 entrepreneurship school for undergrad and grad for the past 25, 30 years. 70% of the students are actually international. And one of the things that I do is also, as an entrepreneur in residence, I'm there teaching them how to sort of even navigate which idea to go with, let alone the process, let alone co-founders, let alone all this stuff that they haven't had experience for. So half of it is education, and the other half is access to the funding and not putting any barriers up. So one of the things that we do in Launchpad is you don't have to know somebody to come in. Mm-hmm. You can go through our application. Granted, we have 185 members, so they're in the community, they're mentoring. Oh, they're part of the Chamber of Commerce. Should have said that before, right? But they're out there meeting these folks before they even are ready, right? And 70% of our funding each year, that historically for 20 years, actually goes into follow-on investments, because first you're investing in the dream, and then you're investing in the results. So we actually it's pretty clear the ROI of that. But thank you for your question.
Sure.
You're out of time.
Thank you. I yield back, Chair.
I now recognize Mr. Crane from Arizona, the great state of Arizona, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My first question is to Mr. Palmer. How does the government interfere most with your ability to invest private capital into potential businesses?
Most is a difficult thing, so I'll ramble for 4 seconds, right? So one is sort of the regulatory risks surrounding certain businesses, right? So I'll speak for our industry. We're mostly focused in New England-based companies, and so we're a reflection of what's going on there. You'll see high tech, you'll see life sciences, you'll see healthcare, and a lot of what we have to contend with is if these companies need to go through regulatory hurdles, if there's stages, if there's anything like that, it impacts our risk, like the risk we're underwriting, which will impact, A, the amount of funding we're willing to give, the valuation, any of these kinds of things. Second, and I think as sort of mentioned, we usually see angel investors invest maybe 10% of their net worth in this asset class because of the risks associated with it, but that is a relative amount. So if something happens to your other money related to your house, related to stocks, related to wherever else that's going, which I think the government has an impact on, that will affect whether we're willing to or able to put money to work. So I think those are the two I'd like to share. Thank you again.
Next question, also to Mr. Palmer. What is the area you are seeing government fail small business the most in?
Where I am seeing it most is, and this is more anecdotal maybe, I don't have the data to surround this, but a lot of companies that could benefit from these SBIR grants that I've been talking about are afraid to go through the process. They're afraid of the paperwork, they think they need to know somebody, they had an entrepreneur that did it, and they heard about however it was perceived to them, it's a barrier, and so they go it the hard way. Or they bootstrap it to the point where they have no more money left. And so what I'm seeing there is maybe it's education, maybe it's a streamline of this process, but those two things are sort of getting in the way of companies, and I think that might be a failure worth looking at.
Follow-on question, Mr. Palmer. How efficient do you think the U.S. government is, including the SBA?
I don't know if I can answer that question. Not for any reason. I just don't have a good response for you. Sorry.
So you don't have an answer on whether you think the U.S. government is efficient or not?
I know for Launchpad, we get entrepreneurs in and out of the process in 3 weeks or less, and we judge them based off of the returns. It's pretty simple, the ROI of that. I'm not sure if I've heard ROIs for the other side.
What about you, Mr. Hodges? What do you think? Do you think the federal government tends to be very efficient or not?
Well, in education, it's a little bit different. Like, for instance, with a trade school, our programs are short term, 6 months, cost effective, and they're for in-demand jobs. And we're actually very, very flexible with our programs. Now, when it comes to, say, if we were a Title IV funded school, which is obviously government funding, we would be more pressured to have longer-term programs. So right now, with the way our school is set up, we're actually able to operate more efficiently because we can get students in the door, get them a job, get them training, get them a job in 6 months. If I was to go Title IV funding and have the government...
Hold on real quick, Mr. Hodges. That's not the question I asked you. I asked you, do you think the federal government is efficient? Is run efficiently?
Is it run efficient? I really can't effectively say that.
Okay.
That.
Does anybody on the panel know how much national debt we have here in the federal government? Ma'am, I saw you smile at the end. You want to take a stab at it? Any idea? Just anybody give me a ballpark? Is it, would you say 10 trillion plus, 20 trillion plus, 30 trillion plus?
30 trillion?
Yep, you're right. Anybody know what it's going to be by January 2025 due to the bill that we passed in the House or that we passed this last week? Anybody know? About 36 trillion dollars. My point is that there's some great people that come into this committee who actually, and I'm an entrepreneur myself. I love entrepreneurs. I love entrepreneurship. I've seen it lift so many people up. I've seen it help so many people in the community. My point is to this panel and this committee, and it's going to continue to be, is that the federal government shouldn't be heavily involved in it because it does a horrible job with the tax dollars. And then when all this money comes up and nobody knows where it went, guess who gets fired? Nobody, ever. Thank you for letting me bloviate and go long, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it.
I now recognize Mr. Pappas from New Hampshire, the great state of New Hampshire, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank our panel members for their comments here today. I'm from New Hampshire, where small business is big business, and our Main Street economies drive our state and our regional economy. And Ms. Smith, I'm glad that you're here. I've gotten to know the work of our Small Business Development Center, the way that they work closely with other resource partners in the small business space, and just to sort of be able to measure the impact that they make. They have helped small businesses access more than $44 million in new capital in New Hampshire, increase sales by $17 million, and create and retain about 760 jobs just over the last year. Overall, their economic impact was about $207 million in New Hampshire's economy. That role has expanded since the pandemic as they've built new relationships and met new entrepreneurs to be able to support. Now, several folks have referenced the issue of duplication, which I think is an important thing for us to focus on, but I'll address a GAO study that was done about 10 years ago that focused on duplication, fragmentation, and overlap of various entrepreneurial development programs. No duplication was specifically found by GAO at that time. They did find overlap and fragmentation, made recommendations for more collaboration within the variety of agencies within SBA and their resource partners. All recommendations were resolved, have not reappeared on their annual report on duplication, fragmentation, and overlap. So I think that's something that's important to reference. And what I see where I live in New Hampshire is a great deal of collaboration among resource partners. One bill that I've introduced helps highlight that collaboration. It's actually called the Collaborate Act, which builds upon the collaboration between our PTACs, or Procurement Technical Assistance Centers, and New Hampshire SBDC, brings to bear some common sense ways that these federal agencies can cooperate. So I'm wondering, Ms. Smith, that was a long sort of entree there, but if you could discuss the role of SBDC as being sort of a nexus of resource partners, and if you see any duplication out there that we need to address, or the ways that you think that greater collaboration can be fostered between various agencies and resource partners that do this work for our small businesses.
Thank you for the question. And as you mentioned, within your state, the more resources we had during the pandemic, the more outputs and successes that we had to support our small businesses. So that is a way for the support to the SBDC program. But as you said, the center of collaboration and a connector for our community, we are the statewide program to help build that federal, state, and local connection for collaboration in the ecosystem for small business assistance and support. I think with that being said, a lot of the assistance that we provide is why we're co-located at certain locations, whether it's a Chamber of Commerce, of course, our higher educations or institutions of higher education, PTACs, now APEX accelerators on the established business side. So that whole life cycle of a business is where SBDCs are that really trusted partner to come and provide the technical assistance, but also connect the business owner with the assistance or the resources that they need.
Well, thanks for that comment. And our small businesses are diverse in terms of how they're established, in terms of how they procure capital, in terms of their day-to-day needs. And I think we need to continue to appreciate that as we think about the constellation of resource partners that are out there to support them. And I will also editorialize here a little bit and say that I was very disappointed to see in the president's budget a cut proposed to SBDCs. And I hope that Congress can work to maintain or increase funding for the work that you all do, which is a lifeline. Maybe in the remaining time I have, if I could ask Mr. Palmer a question. Congress, on a bipartisan basis, has been focused on how we rebuild the nation's infrastructure, how we invest in our industrial base, including in the semiconductor industry. We need to see serious workforce development as part of that. But maybe you can speak to how these private dollars can be matched, how public dollars can be matched with private investment in the interplay between those pools of money.
Sure. I think I've mentioned it, thank you for the question, a couple of times of underwriting the capital intensity of certain opportunities, right? So for semiconductors, for training these AI models that seem like magic, it takes a significant amount of hardware, and a significant amount of money, a significant amount of energy to get to that magic moment. And so pairing sort of that ability for a longer time horizon and potentially deeper pockets with the stage at which commercialization can happen, and we can build, these job creation opportunities, build companies around it, and all of that. I think that's how it gets paired.
Thanks for those thoughts. I yield back my time.
I now want to recognize Ms. Salazar from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I represent the city of Miami, which is according to a study conducted by the federal government, is one of the best places in America to start a small business, because for immigrants and for the Hispanic community, having your small shop or having your small business is living the American dream. So I want to thank all of you for coming in and sharing with us your experience. And specifically to Mr. Palmer, you said here on your statement that the SBA should begin to leverage local angel groups that are present in every community. So could you be a little bit more specific as to in which way we could help you leverage those local angels groups through the SBA?
Sure. So thank you for the question. One of the things that we like to think about when we, I said 1,500 to 2,000 companies come, and some of them are prepared for venture scale funding, angel scale funding, and some are not, right? And knowing the difference between those two could be a way to say the small businesses that are the local shops that really support that, whatever, maybe it's a craft, maybe it's a service, but the scale sort of stops at a certain point, versus the angel and VC sort of very large scale. They're small businesses to begin with, and then they grow from there. And so knowing how to kind of almost collaborate together to say, you belong here and you belong with me, could be one of the best ways to do it. That's potentially going to local angel groups. We're doing mentorship. So if you do mentorship
But to see if I understand a little bit better, if you have to write legislation, then that will rule over SBA. So what would that legislation say in order to create what you're saying, to leverage local angel groups? Because what you're saying here basically is that there's a disparity, that the SBA could help narrow the disparity by developing programs that leverage that private angel. So what are the programs that we would have to create?
Yeah. So in all honesty, I don't know all the existing programs, and especially not basically it may be in your area, but still it's finding ways. I don't see any SBA folks at my angel group meetings out in the community when I'm watching pitch competitions, which are open to the public, right? And so knowing that we're not in the same place, I'm not sure you need to legislate it or mandate it, but we're just not in the same place. And I think that's doing a disservice to companies that...
And if we were to be in the same place, what's the benefit for the community? What would be the benefit for the community?
Yeah, so of those 2,000 companies we see, we only invest in 2 to 5% of them. Some just aren't ready, and some will never be sort of venture scale. Knowing that they're not coming with us and they can go with another opportunity, I think that's where the benefit of the community is.
If you said that there are 16 million, there could be 16 million angel investors, and there are only 16,000. That's a big disparity. And what is the number one cost for that disparity?
Awareness that you can be an angel investor and how to do it not, like gambling or willy-nilly, like actually finding the companies, working together, guiding them. We sit on the boards of our companies. We are with them for between 5 and 10 years. It's one of those things that people just don't understand how the process of angel investing sort of works. And maybe they haven't had exposure to it, but it's awareness.
And how could we help you or help the community become aware of those 16 million potential angels investors? I'm trying to figure out in which way we could help you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Marketing, understanding when someone goes to the SBA and their venture scale, like here's what angel investors are, talking to the people around you, constituents, any of that kind of stuff. It's an awareness problem, which is effectively a marketing problem, in my opinion.
So you're suggesting for the SBA to become, that's what I'm trying to understand. Marketing I don't think we're in the business of marketing, but then how could we be within the rules?
Without going too much farther on a limb, I'm not actually sure.
But you're basically telling me is that we should be marketing to our constituents the fact that they are angel investors. But then we're trying to figure out how to do that.
I might flip that if I might.
Okay, please do. Maybe I'm not understanding.
Sure. So 16,000 angel investors are part of the ACA. 15,000, right? We invest about $950 million. Imagine if there was 2 more zeros attached to that and what that would do. I'm not sure how to solve the problem, but there's something there to unlock.
That could do. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yield back.
I now want to recognize Gluzin Comp Perez from Washington for 5 minutes. I apologize if I said that wrong.
Full points. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Hodges, thank you for being here. I'm glad that the committee is highlighting the important work that you do in preparing students for employment and career advancement in healthcare and construction trades job market. But there is a significant pressure for young people to go to college and pursue a 4-year degree. At the same time, we know that so many small businesses are impacted by ongoing shortages of skilled labor, and training centers like yours are important to make sure that businesses have the skilled labor they need. So my question, how do we confront the enormous pressure, societal pressure, family pressure on young people to go to college and instead get more of them to see the opportunities in the trades? How do we set up a pipeline for them to get into these jobs and be successful? And beyond that, how can we help more businesses partner with career and technical education programs to utilize the critical skills that students are learning at centers like yours?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that question. One of the things that we really need is a better partnership between the high schools and the training schools like we actually have. For instance, the one thing that sets the training center apart from a lot of these universities is the fact that we can actually train our students, and we actually train them in 6 months for shovel-ready jobs. And these particular jobs are in demand fields. As opposed to a lot of our students, they simply do not want to go off to a university and wait 4 years to actually make a decent living. And with the career, there's some actually great paying careers out there in the electrical and in the trades. And but the challenging thing is right now in the high schools, and right now in the high schools, there's really no push to go into these technical to these particular trades. And so if we can get some help in bridging that gap, that would be great.
Yeah. I'd like to mention that apprenticeship provides a really great opportunity for folks to get on-the-job training while they learn, and data shows that businesses can get a really strong return on this. But in my experience, so I own an auto repair and a machine shop with my husband, and we looked into having a 16-year-old kid come in an apprenticeship program, and we could not afford the liability insurance, and very real concerns about inviting the DOL into our business in that way. And we decided we couldn't do it. till we found a private nonprofit that agreed to cover the cost of his liability insurance to have a 16-year-old in the shop with us. And he's been with us ever since. He just bought his first house, right? Like, these are pathways to a solid middle class. But the hurdle for small businesses to access these programs and to engage in apprenticeship programs on the capital side can be really intense. And I wondered if you could sort of speak to some of the broader set of challenges that businesses face in engaging in these apprenticeships programs.
And as far as with the trades?
Yes.
Well, some of the challenges that they're going to have immediately, and it's something that's not being taught very well, is just typical business, as far as entrepreneurial education, entrepreneurial programs. But also just access to capital. One of the first things one of the challenges that you actually run into when you start a business is just keeping your costs down. And if you can actually have an entrepreneurial programs in high schools, okay, that actually can show them how to put together business plans, how to put together all of the different steps for operating a business. I think that would be very beneficial. Now, we actually are doing something very similar to this for the Boots to Business program on our basis here for veterans. But I believe that's sorely lacking right now out in the regular community for civilians.
Thank you so much to all of our witnesses for their testimony today. Thank you for the work you're doing. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you. In closing, I'd like to thank our witnesses for their testimony and for appearing before us today. Without objection, members have 5 legislative days to submit additional materials and written questions for the witnesses to the chair, which will be forwarded to the witnesses. I ask the witnesses to please respond promptly. If there is no further business, without objection, the committee is adjourned.